All right. Good morning, everybody. I will get us started here. We've got folks rolling in, so I'll do a quick safety message to get us started. But thanks for joining us for the second technical working group as part of the Phase 4 Track 2 to discuss the RAMP and GRC data templates. As it's winter time, I'm just going to do a quick safety message about heater safety. I'm actually wishing I had one of those little, we call them little stars next to me right now, but I'll have to deal with our home heating system that we've got for right now. So stay warm and stay safe this winter. The National Fire Protection Association reports that heaters, both fixed and portable, are the leading cause of fires at home, I'm assuming, with space heaters responsible for 81% of all fire-related fatalities. So proper heater safety practices reduce the risk of fires, carbon monoxide poisoning, and other hazards. So they ensure that your home stays warm and safe. But here are some important heater safety tips. So keep your combustibles away. Keep flammable materials like paper, clothing, and furniture at least 3 feet away from space heaters to prevent fires. Have heaters professionally installed if you can. Ensure that your heater is installed by a qualified technician to prevent electrical or gas-related hazards. Inspect heaters regularly. Check your heater for any signs of wear, damage, or malfunction. Replace or repair any faulty units to keep them functioning safely. And turn them off when not in use. Always turn off space heaters when leaving a room or going to bed to prevent accidental fires. And if you're looking for some additional information about space heaters, we have some extra information for you from the good folks at FEMA. So I am going to just very quickly go through some kind of house rules, and then we'll just reflect a little bit on this agenda. The meeting is recorded, and it's possible that one or more decision makers may be present during the meeting, but no decisions will be taken. I don't believe that there's any decision makers in the room at the moment. But let's do a quick roll call. Let's see, are the Semper companies online?
We're here. Thanks, Eddie.
Okay, great. Is Southern California Edison on the line?
Hello, Eddie. We're here.
Okay, great. And Public Advocate's Office. Anyone from Public Advocate's Office?
Yes, we are here.
Okay, great. Thank you. And anyone from the Utility Reform Network? Okay. Is anyone from Pacific Gas and Electric on the line?
Yes, but present.
Okay. Anyone from Energy Producers and Users Coalition and Indicated Shippers? Anyone from the Mussey Grade Road Alliance? Or Protect Our Communities Foundation? Or the Utility Consumers Action Network? Okay. If not, if anyone would like to be recognized, please let us know. You can raise your hand, or you can please let us know through the chat function. Let's see, just for some attendee participation, I just wanted to mention that if there's any IT-related questions, I think today we have, don't believe Joseph Haga is on the line, but I know that Jacob is on the line, and I think I saw.
I'm here
Jacob,
as well. This is Blake.
Oh, Blake. That's right, Blake. Yeah, you're with us today too. Could one of you guys put your email in the chat, just in case folks have some questions or they fall off the line and need to get in touch with you? That would be great. And then all of the attendees will have the ability to mute and unmute themselves, but we do ask that attendees try to stay muted except during the Q&A period. And so we'll let Semper kind of run through their presentation here in just a minute, and then we'll have ample time for Q&A afterwards. And you can always enter in any questions in the chat during the presentation or at any time during the technical working group today. And if there's not enough time for us to respond to all the chat box questions, then SPD will collect the answers to those questions and circulate them to the service list after the workshop. During the discussion, like we do ask that everybody try to use the hand raise function to speak, and then I'll do my best to call on attendees in the order that we receive them. But then you may need to lower your hand after you've asked it. Sometimes teams will do it for you, but just kind of pay attention to that if you could. So the agenda is fairly fixed today. We're expecting, Sempra to run through their presentation within about 20 minutes, and then it's really kind of open Q&A session afterwards. We can have discussions about the individual pieces of the template that Sempra's going to be presenting, or their guideline. If you have any questions about like definitions or what have you, we can talk through that. I'm going to hand it over to Josh here in just a minute. And so he'll be able to kind of move back and forth between the Sempra slide deck, the template, and the guidelines if need be. We'll have a break at 11. And then I just wanted to point out, like, we do have additional time all the way till 12:30. So folks, including from SPD, are welcome to ask questions throughout this period of time. And just a reminder that tomorrow Pacific Gas and Electric will be presenting, and then Cal Advocates will present on Wednesday, and the good folks at SPD will be presenting on Thursday. And then we'll, at the end of the SPD discussion, we'll take a quick poll and try to determine if we will continue the conversation on Friday this week as well. Other than that, I don't have any other, things that I wanted to go over. If there's no questions, I think I'll probably hand it over to Josh.
Thanks, Eddie. I'm actually going to hand it over to Jill Tracy, our Senior Director of Risk and Compliance at SoCalGas. And Jill, I'll bring the slides up right now.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. Well, no need to introduce myself. Thank you for that, Josh. SoCalGas and SDG&E would like to thank the SPD for hosting these technical working group sessions to advance the development of our RAMP and GRC data templates in the RDF. We consider this an important part of increasing transparency and accountability in utility risk mitigation and prioritization. Next slide, please. Here is our agenda for the joint presentation for SoCalGas and SDG&E. We'll start with an overview of our template. We'll talk about the risk template hierarchy, the risk summary, mitigation summary, and benefit cost ratio summary. And if there are any questions during the presentation, we just like to be consistent with Eddie's agenda to wait for the Q&A section of the discussion. And thank you very much for all the attendees. We're looking forward to a robust discussion. And now I will turn it over to my colleague at SDG&E, Scott Pearson. Thanks.
Thanks, Jill. I just wanted to let everyone know we're going to have Jade Teamswan, who's our risk governance manager for SDG&E, walking through the deck today. But we've also got Alan Catulli and Chloe Bled, who are senior members of the ERM team at SoCalGas, available for questions. Jade, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining our workshop today. Again, I'm Jade Teamswan, Risk Governance Manager for SDG&E. Let's see here. There we go. Thank you, Josh. SoCalGas and SDG&E proposed, or our proposed RAMP template includes the data fields necessary to meet the requirements of the existing RDF, which applies, of course, to our upcoming May 2025 RAMP filing. This means we don't aim to capture in this proposed template any of the unresolved issues discussed in this current Phase 4 proceeding. We do add in the field value constraints column that you'll see in the following slides additional detail regarding the syntax of the data and, as applicable, whether it was estimated or if it was derived. Estimations are, of course, based on subject matter expert inputs or limited data sets, whereas the derived data may be produced from empirical data, prorations of industry data, or simulated through statistical methods. Speaking of stats, you can see here that we summarized here of 81 fields in this template, 21 are estimated and 39 are derived. I should add, by the way, I'm at the tail end of a week-long cold, so forgive me if I go into sudden meltdown here. Try my best. So I'll get down to the hierarchies here. The first hierarchy level you see in the black, the master inputs. We're not going to discuss those in detail in this presentation. These are fairly straightforward, though. These are the values that are, of course, defined in our upfront quantitative risk chapter of the REMP filing and applied consistently throughout the assessment, unless otherwise noted. What we will get into, of course, is starting at the second layer here in the dark blue of a risk summary. For convenience of the stakeholders, this contains pre-mitigated risk-specific definitions, including its multiple views such as tranches, expected values, and other pre-mitigated risk quantifications as directed by the RDF. The third hierarchy level in green here is the mitigation summary. It contains details regarding mitigations such as the forecasted cost types and program benefits. It's broken out by tranche and in aggregate at the mitigation level. Thus is the beginning building blocks of the BCR quantities. And the last section here, of course, in yellow, the lowest level is, of course, the benefit cost ratios or BCRs, which are BCRs in all their glory, and there are 3 discount rates for the test year and each attrition year as well. Next slide, please, Josh. There we go. So the rest of our brief deck is organized in this hierarchy view to help simplify the various sheet levels for presentment. The numbers 5 and 6 that you see tagged there in the corners of those boxes indicate the slide numbers in this deck to which we'll navigate to expand on details regarding the corresponding subjects. For the items that are not tagged with a number, they won't be elaborated here, and for good reason. They're either optional items or they are duplicates of other levels that you see there, and so we'll have to use our imagination a little bit of there will be several of those, such as here that the tranche level would be, of course, multiple tranches for each risk, and so you just see that repeated for each tranche. Next slide, please, John. So at the risk summary level, this table aims to provide all the key information regarding the risk definition, both qualitatively and quantitatively per the RDS requirements. Overall, this view and the next slide that supplements this closely align to what our pre-filing risk selection workshop presents, minus the added mitigation and tranching details, which we added here just to better inform the reader at this level. You could see here, and most of our slides will look very similar in format to this as well. So I'll pause on this one a little bit just to help others absorb it. EV, of course, is expected value. TR on the left there is tail risk. We've given the field description information there. And as I mentioned there, the field value constraints, the syntax of each of those data points. And of course, to the far right there, the estimated versus derived values. Okay, next slide, Josh. On this slide 6, the expected value table folds in the other non-safety attributes for the risks that qualified for inclusion in RAMP and expands upon the components that make up the pre-mitigated risk calculation, namely lore and core. All values from this slide are then replicated for each identified tranche as well, as the RDF requires. For our asset-based risks like electric infrastructure integrity, wildfire and PSPS, and medium pressure gas, high pressure gas, data is studied down to lower levels of lower core pairs. Thus, the tranche level would further illustrate how those form the basis of those tranches, of course. Onward to slide 7. Okay, so back to the hierarchy view. So that covers the pre-mitigation side of our data template. This, of course, flips to the other side to our post-mitigation template with the mitigation summary. Again, you'll see for presentation purposes, we won't elaborate the tranche level as it would generally be repeated view of what we're showing here. The following slides will cover the building blocks of calculating those BCRs, of course. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this mitigation summary, this level applies for each mitigation and control for any given risk. Then, as mentioned, expanded for each corresponding tranche level that it addresses as required by RDF. What makes this level appear more voluminous now, though, is of course the 3 discount rates. So you see the D1, D2, and D3 there about halfway through the page. Next slide. Okay, on slide 9, seemingly a lot going on here, but this layer ultimately breaks down the previous slide's costs into its components, whether the cost type is capital or O&M, and for each attrition year that follows. And then the next slide here, the last part of this section. Yep. Lastly, for this section, this view describes the details around the benefits quantifications. The benefits are measured in a few different components here, with effectiveness level by attribute, quantified benefits for each attrition year, and the lifetime of mitigation benefits, all in expected value. So to recap the last 3 slides here, it'll be repeated, of course, for each mitigation. You saw that box in the top right there, just as a reminder. So just think, for each mitigation for SDG alone, that's 8 risks times each mitigation, times all those layers, of course. So it's a pretty substantial amount of data as it is. Next slide, please. So under our final data hierarchy level, the BCRs, much like the theme we've been covering, much of these is repetitive for lower level data. In this case, we'll cover our proposed template for a single mitigation, BCR'd, if that's a thing, at its aggregate level in a single test year. And the actual results, would of course cover the contrary, every mitigation and every tranche level for every attrition year. Next slide, please. So as you can see, this data is very similar to the previous higher level, but the multiple discounts are now applied. And these are, of course, by this level, they're all derived from all the upper levels. And this is actually our last slide. So what we wanted to show here, of course, is RDF's requirements are already very comprehensive. In preparing our current ramp, we've already found that our previous 2021 ramp serves as very limited groundwork for what we've had to essentially reinvent for 2025 due to the expansive evolution of the RDF. As we consider the ongoing matters of the Phase 4 proceeding, we think it's very important to consider how large and cascading the impacts may be for even adding a limited number of data attribute layers, especially if at the project level. So that's it for now. We're happy to take questions, please. Eddie, turn it back to you.
Sure. I do have some clarifying questions, and I'll help get us started unless anybody else would like to go first. Yeah, go ahead, Ami. Thank you.
I have a very high level question. So the first field in your hierarchy tables are mitigation ID. So the question would be, how do you connect this table? Is it based on mitigate? I know that you mentioned tranche level, but I couldn't see any tranche field there. So are you connecting based on the mitigation ID together, these tables? Basically, what's your primary key for these tables?
Yeah, great question. I would say so. Mitigation ID is probably the primary key that connects all of the data.
So there would be just one. So for each mitigation, there would be just one table, or do you break it down for based on tranches as well?
It would be broken down for tranches as well. Each one would probably contain a mitigation ID at the top as that primary key, as you mentioned, but layered, of course, for each of the tranches. And so if there are 25 tranches for any given risk, then you would see that broken down for each mitigation as well.
So we can, if we have the data, we can connect these like tables or hierarchies based on tranche as well. Can we connect them together?
I believe so. Yes, that should be the case here.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Amin. Actually, I want to build on what Amin was just asking, because at least in all of the three risk tables that you've provided us, the risk summary, the pre-mitigated risk, expected value, and the tail risk one, mitigation ID is not included there because that would be the values that are calculated at the risk level. And so, so I just wanted to make sure that in the mitigation cost, you have like the risk name. And so I assume that, you know, you'd be able to kind of track like how much risk is estimated in like, you know, 2A1, and it would correspond to the risk that's related to the risk name, column B, in 3A and 3C1 and 3C2. But it is the tranche variable, because you haven't provided us tranches in any of these, so it's a little bit unclear, you know, what that tranche variable looks like, and is it going to be consistent across all of these different tables?
Yeah, fair question. This is a good would-be opportunity to have a giant whiteboard for us to scribble on, right? I think that's a fair question. I think well, it's hard to illustrate. I do.
So you don't.
Think,
you don't have a spreadsheet that has like the tranche variable in it right now?
Yeah, I'm searching through it as well. I don't see one here listed.
No, I know the one that you shared didn't, and maybe that's part of my questions. We can come back to that in a minute, but I think this is it's actually kind of an important question that Amin is asking, is, you know, at least with like the cost fields and the BCR fields, you have that mitigation ID, so you can kind of link everything together. But linking the mitigation to like specific portions of risk, we won't be able to really understand how you're doing that unless we can see what that tranche field is and how you're defining it, and where it's located within the spreadsheet. So yeah, it makes it a little bit difficult, I think, to know for sure how the tables are interconnected. Yeah, maybe I'll come back to tranches in just a minute, but yeah, I guess I had a couple of high level just clarifications. I think it was on like slide 2 or 3. You had mentioned like the calculation of VSL. Yeah, right there on slide 3. Sorry, the calculation of safety core VSL and MAIS factors. Could you let us know what that acronym stands for?
Oh, the MAIS factors are from the phase 2 decision describing the oh gosh, what am I calling it now? The fractional portions of the VSL.
Got it.
Abbreviated
Okay.
injury scale. Maximum abbreviated injury
Hadn't
scale.
seen that abbreviated yet, but thank you. That's good to know. And then yeah, you had mentioned, and I think it's nice that you have these estimated and you know, derived data fields from estimates. Yeah, denoted as D. Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe that would actually even be valuable to have in the actual like the template guideline. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to kind of add. Maybe that would be like a 4th column, because it's helpful in the slides, but it's not located in the actual template guideline. So at any rate, that's just something for you guys to think about. I just wanted to add that. And then could you go back to slide 4 real quick? Yeah. I guess like I just wanted to double check that like you had mentioned that essentially 2A and 2B are going to be identical. It's just that one is at the tranche level. So is there are the fields out like other than the tranche level ID, will everything be the same except for whatever that tranche level value is? Is that the idea?
Everything that is applicable, yes, absolutely. That's the idea.
Applicable, but which columns, like for instance, if we took you know, I think it's the expected value slide, and actually you provided the tail risk pre-mitigated slide as well, but like are any of the fields here not applicable if this was presented at the tranche level?
Well, certainly if it's because it has like the gas and electric piece as well. If it's just an electric risk, then it would not contain the gas piece. That would be one example of what's not applicable. But yes, broken down at the lower core pair level, which is what makes up the tranches.
Okay, and then could you go to the next slide as well? And is that true for this slide as well, that everything here would be the same except you would just add a tranche ID value?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, and then one more clarifying question was on slide 11. Yeah, you have both the mitigation level BCR lifetime and the tranche level BCR lifetime. Does that include a variable for so my understanding is that when you're calculating out BCR, you're going to be
if it helps you. Yeah, just
somebody on the phone is okay, thanks. Okay. I think somebody is still unmuted. Oh, Ed, I think it might have been. Yeah. Anyway, Jake, sorry, distracted you. So I was asking about the BCR lifetime calculation. You know, when you're calculating that out, will you have the lifetime cost for that? I understand that when you calculate the BCR, you're going to present the present value, the lifetime present value cost. But you know, with the test year, and you know, again, you guys have only provided us with one table here, so we actually can't see exactly what it is that you're thinking. But the cost value is just for test year 2028 mitigation cost. So for that 4A and 4C, would you also present the lifetime mitigation cost, or would you? Yeah, I guess that's my first question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I believe so. We should be we should be displaying the lifetime cost. Of course, it's part of the BCR calculus, right? So, for example, 50 years should show the full lifetime.
So would it be undiscounted? Because that's what you have the undiscounted total mitigation cost for test year 2028 in table 4B1 column C. So you would have that for each mitigation. And so you're saying that you would have that that for the lifetime cost as well. Yeah. Yeah, if you look here, the test year mitigation cost UD, that's the undiscounted total mitigation cost for, but only for test year 2028. So my question is, if it's in the lifetime table that you're planning to create, will it include the undiscounted lifetime mitigation cost?
My hunch is yes. I need to double check. I thought our table did state that mitigation lifetime BCR at expected value, applying discount factor 1, 2, and 3. That's what our table says. So yeah, I believe so.
These are just for test year 2028, so I'm asking about the lifetime.
Okay, I'm starting to understand the question a little better now. I guess no, then we don't currently conceive that, at least in the presentation here. I need to double check though if that is perhaps the case internally.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Hi everyone. Just a kind of a real basic question. Your ramps are coming due this year, and I would expect, is this the structure you're planning to use in your ramp filing in May, perhaps with some modifications that might be suggested from these workshops? Is that this basically your structure for now?
More or less, it's probably subject to maybe some minor adjustments, if needed. But yeah, we intend to align very much to these templates.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And I'm getting some internal confirmation of the earlier question, Eddie, that the lifetime benefits will indeed be shown.
Okay. Okay. Great. The undiscounted.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. The lifetime, and not just the benefit. It was specific to the costs. You do have the you have the total mitigation expected value. I'm assuming that's what that EV stands for, benefits for undiscounted. And then yeah, okay, that's interesting to know. And also important because I believe there was recent legislation that was just passed that kind of requires that. So these fields, I think, will be help you guys to be compliant with that piece of legislation. So that's great. See, any other additional questions or thoughts? I have many that I could go into, but leave it open for just a minute. Yeah, Chris, I see you coming off on camera. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think it might be slide 9. Can we go to slide 9? Yeah, that's it. So just so I kind of get oriented correctly, this has a mitigation ID and then a capital investment for the test year. Down below, there's a mitigation O&M for the test year. And then further down below, mitigation total cost for the test year. Is it the plan that it would this be a combination of O&M with capital? I'm not sure if I'm clear on this. For the total cost.
Double checking on my end as well. I believe you're reading that correctly, though. That's a total cost with combined cost types.
Okay, so, but I would imagine that the capital is going to be amortized.
Correct.
Okay, and then it would be combined with the OEM to represent a total, I gather.
Chris, I believe that's correct.
Okay. Is there also a plan to capture like the total cost, not looking at it just amortized, but also looking at a particular mitigation to understand, for this particular mitigation ID, what the total capital cost would be? across the entire program?
Chris, sorry to redirect here. I'm getting a correction on my end here that the
Sure.
amortization that does not apply here in the ramp. That would be a GRC condition.
Okay, so this would be the entire GRC forecast or request, I imagine, for a capital program.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, Chris, could you repeat the question?
So if I look at, I think it's the third line down, mitigation capital investment, TY test year. That would include the test year capital forecast or request for the test year GRC.
Yes, but for that one post-test year, correct.
Okay. And then, yeah, well, I'm not sure, maybe it varies from mitigation to mitigation, but I don't know if a particular mitigation would have both components of it, depending upon how it's structured, or if it might just be a mitigation that's an entirely capital program and a different mitigation, which is an entirely O&M program. I'm just, I'm just curious how those get combined for the down below for total mitigation, because it would seem that they might not be combinable if there's a mixture of O&M with capital programs. But anyway, I guess that's something maybe I can understand better later. Okay, that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Maybe since we're kind of talking about cost-related topics, then I'll kind of ask a couple of cost-related questions as well. I guess the first is just that in your BCR calculation tab, or maybe go down a couple of slides. It's the yellow section. Yeah. So actually, I think it might be is this for, yeah, this is for test year 2028. Yeah, I think, yeah, you have like the light, no, I guess this is a higher level question, because in one of your slides, you also designate that there's like a lifetime BCR, and we were kind of talking about that just a minute ago. But also for this slide, when you're talking about present value, we'll just take 2008 as the example. What's the formula that you're planning to use for any of the discount rates? It doesn't really matter, but just when you're planning to estimate present value, is this just using like the NPV function in Excel, or is this a calculation that is happening in some other format or some other document that SDG&E is developing?
Eddie, I'd have to admit you've reached my point of saturation for answering a technical question with the calculation. I'd have to defer to a colleague to answer that, or maybe take it back.
Yeah, kind of tacked onto that is just the question of whether or not this present value calculation and the calculation of BCR is going to have an estimate of for the revenue requirement for that particular year. So for instance, there's modifiers like what's called the PVRR that I'm actually not familiar if Sempra uses that. I'm pretty sure that you do, because I've had some discussions with some of your rates folks before, and I believe that they have a value for like a modifier that estimates the actual revenue requirement impacts to ratepayers. And I just wanted to make sure that when you're calculating BCR, that's going to be included in the cost part of that calculation for test year 2028 when you're doing present value.
Hey, Eddie, it's Jamie. It's Jamie York. I'm with SoCalGas and SDG&E. I can answer some of these questions on the cost side. I also, as Jade indicated, I'm limited on my understanding on the algorithm, so to speak.
Sure.
Previously, we have not provided a revenue requirement calculation of any kind in our ramp filings. And I mean, we can discuss it. General rule of thumbs don't include a lot of the other pieces, such as tax implications and other things. And so that's not something that we have done in the past and are hesitant to do in the future. I think some of the other utilities do that. It's not something that we currently do in our results of operations model. All I've seen with revenue requirement calculations are simple rules of thumb.
Yeah, where you come up with just a general modifier,
A factor, yeah.
a factor, and then you use that to estimate what the potential revenue requirement would be.
Correct.
Yeah. So
but
you
I can
don't.
tell you, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure. So you don't have like a worksheet where you calculate out what that modifier would be. You just use like SME judgment to do that.
We have not provided a revenue requirement in the past.
No, that I understand. Yeah, because and an actual revenue requirement using the RO model is a very detailed calculation.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that when Sempra estimated its present value cost for for a test year calculation in the past, when they created like the discounted rate, I think that there might have been like some type of a factor that was added in to kind of estimate what the actual impact to the ratepayer would be. Beyond just the expenditures, whether they're capital or whether they're O&M. I believe that there's a factor that's added in, particularly to the capital investment. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was potentially part of the calculation here. Yeah.
So we can take that back and look at the calculations we've done in the past. If we have done that, my hunch is that it would only be to account for what Chris was saying, is that the useful life of the costs. So it's kind of a rudimentary or nascent calculation rather than as you indicated, like an all-encompassing revenue requirement.
Yeah. Because I think this was the bill that I was referencing was AB 2847, where for applications, I believe that they do actually require the utility to provide a bit more clarity on revenue requirement for each year that the capital expenditures are described in the application. I understand that this is it kind of calls out. Actually, it doesn't really call out the GRC in particular. It just says like requesting authorization for or recovery of capital expenditures. At any rate, since the ramp does feed into the GRC, it probably would make sense to just make sure that those calculations are somehow incorporated into the present value. It doesn't necessarily require the final authorized like revenue requirement that would come out of an RO model, but an estimate is, I think, important because otherwise the BCR doesn't really capture the full impact to the ratepayer.
Eddie, I hear you. There's a lot of things it doesn't capture. So I think,
Sure.
I just want to be mindful about, what we're including and what we're not, and how it shows up. So we can look at that some more.
Okay. Great. And thanks to Chris for kind of starting that conversation. was something that was also kind of on my mind with the cost related questions. Well, since we're actually on like cost related questions, can we go up maybe 2 slides? I think it's in the green section. Maybe actually it's in the next slide, I believe, because it's in the cost, not the benefits part of it. Yeah. Huh. Okay. Yeah, actually no, it was the last the one that slide 9. Yes, this one. So this slide is slightly different, or at least the field value constraints that are listed here are slightly different than the field value constraints for this table in the actual template guideline that you guys provided. Let's see, summary. Yeah, I don't know, Josh, if you're able to kind of pull that into your field of view there, but you guys listed out numeric and then had a capital GRID grid like located in that field value constraint. And I was wondering if you could just explain if that was a typo or what exactly you were thinking of in that particular.
Hey, were you talking about the guidelines?
Yeah, the
Okay.
template guideline.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thanks.
Jay, do you want me to explain what grid is?
Happy, because I can't think of the acronym at the moment.
Hey, Eddie, it's not a typo.
Okay.
Grid is our forecasting system. We have an internal homegrown forecasting system called the General Rate Case Integrated Database.
Okay.
I know we love acronyms.
Yeah.
And we use that system. We are using it for RAMP now in our rate cases. It basically culminates all of our accounting data with forecasting. And so we are using that now for all of our general rate case related filings.
Then that's great to know. Thank you. In that case, I just wanted to give you a heads up that at the very bottom of that, Josh, the very last variable or the very last field is total mitigation cost. Sorry, it was on the previous page. I think it's page 5. At the very bottom of page 5. Yeah, you have numeric grid listed there. But total mitigation cost is also going to come up in your BCR calculation. So if you look at on page 8 at the top, Josh, you have test year 2028 mitigation cost. And it even says that this is calculated from 3A, but there your field value constraint is just numeric dollars. And so I'm assuming that it's just the same calculation.
Yeah.
So it probably should be a numeric grid. Just a heads up.
No, thank you. Yeah, those should have been aligned. So thanks.
Great. And then I would assume that would be the same for all of your test years, not just the test year, but also all 3 of the post-test years as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, great. Let's see. Yeah. And so I guess on that, I just wanted to make sure that, this mitigation BCR test year 2028, are we, you guys didn't provide us with a post-test year example. Are we to assume that this would be identical for post-test years? It's just, you would just switch the year, essentially?
That's correct, Eddie.
Okay, great. I do have some other questions that we can go back to if nobody else wants to raise their hand. So maybe we could go to either the slide or your Excel file, but I was just curious about in the risk summary piece. You guys have disaggregated your consequences but only for the safety score on that particular table. And I was just curious as to why that is. Why in the summary did you not include your reliability and financial? I understand that it's so that you can determine whether or not it's in the top 40%. But then what exactly is column I? Or I guess what is it? What kind of information is it providing to us?
Sorry, Eddie, looking at this simultaneous to you as well. Column I is core attributes. Yes, no inclusion of safety, electrical reliability, gas reliability, financial attributes.
I mean, I guess my question is, what does no mean? If you answer no to that question, what does that actually mean?
No, it's a good question, Eddie. So this view is, and you just mentioned it, it is intended to be the view of our risk selection, right? So a no would indicate we did not include presentment of the core attributes for non-safety attributes because it was not evaluated as part of risk selection.
Oh, I see. So this would just be if you were to include some of your other enterprise risks that actually don't need to go through the full BCR calculation, then, but essentially, would you still calculate out a pre-mitigated risk score and like number of mitigations and things like that for those other enterprise risks?
No.
You would not, right? But the reason I ask is because, like, you know, when you guys presented on just a few weeks ago, I believe that maybe one of your slides actually did have like a list of your enterprise risks other than the ones that were presented in RAMP, or did I miss that?
That's correct. And then there was a bold line that showed, you know, what was above and before you.
Okay, great. I did remember that. Okay, good. I'm not getting too old yet. So yeah, I guess then if you do have that on that slide, then maybe it is possible to provide the pre-mitigated risk score for those other enterprise risks. Is that what, you know, you could present in column J, but then I don't know if you would continue to complete those fields after that.
The latter is exactly what I was going to say. Is, you know, this would be the end of that data. Then no other data that would supplement on the mitigation side.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sure, like, I guess I understand the idea of just providing the safety consequence score. I wouldn't necessarily call it the safety risk score. It's the safety consequence score, just to prevent confusion. But anyway, that's a different topic. But yeah, I understand, like, just presenting the natural units and the monetized of safety on the risk summary. But I'm just wondering if you know, if the answer to I is yes, then wouldn't you want to include the other attributes here? I guess the logic is that those values are calculated in 2A.1 and 2A.2. Is that correct?
So 1 and 2.2.
So you have in the tab 2A.1, it's pre-mitigated risk EV. You also have the core safety, core reliability, and core financial calculations. And I mean, I guess those are basically the same calculations that are listed on the risk summary, or at least for safety, it's the same calculations that would be presented on the risk summary page. You just don't have reliability and financial. Is that correct?
Yeah. So all you know, as the RDF requires, all of the safety scores would be computed there for us to determine what the 40% is. But then only the core attributes in column I would only apply to those that qualified for that top 40.
I see. Yeah, so I guess that's why you have it separated. Okay. I was just thinking you could kind of do all of that on one table. You don't necessarily need to have it spread out over 3 different tables, but because you're also going to create, this breakdown for tranches as well. Here you've only presented risk, but you're going to have, additional tabs for tranche. So it seems like you might just end up with quite a few tabs, and might require the need to kind of like bounce back and forth. So I was just thinking about how that works from a data management perspective. And then the other question is risk scaling applied at this stage? So when you're calculating out the pre-mitigation core expected value for safety natural units, or your safety dollars, actually, I guess it would be at safety dollars. Have you already applied the your risk scaling approach at this point?
Yeah, at this point of filing the ramp in this template, yes, scaling would be applied in all of these values. If it applies, it would apply here, yes.
Right. So none of these natural units, we wouldn't see an unscaled value of natural units here.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so when you present this, we'll have to ask like a data request asking for unscaled natural units if that's what we were interested in looking at.
That's
Okay. Good to know. Hopefully others heard that. So let's see. Oh, right. Yeah, big question that came up for many of us, like at SPD, or the few that talked about this. For the mitigation summary tab, and actually all of the mitigation tabs, where is the presentation of alternatives? Or how does SDG intend to present alternatives through the data template?
That is a good question. We did not itemize alternative mitigation specifically, but of course it is just another mitigation ID. So you should see a separate table or a table for just like any other mitigation ID.
Oh, I see. So, but maybe I'll need you to clarify there. Are you saying that, like for instance, the table that Josh is sharing right now, the mitigation ID would be, let's say it's undergrounding, is the primary mitigation, but your alternative was covered conductor. So you would have one mitigation ID for undergrounding, and then another mitigation ID for covered conductor. That would designate it as an alternative.
Yeah, we'd code it into the ID and make it a unique identifier so that it was clear, such as alt.
I got it. Okay. So, and that way we would be able to like look across, and we would be able to see the BCR calculation for that alternative.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. And that would track all the way through to the full BCR calculations in the yellow tabs as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess the next question is just that when you say mitigation ID, like this mitigation ID is at the program level, correct?
Correct. Program level, not the project level. Program level.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and so there's not currently an attempt by SDG to develop a template for presenting project level data.
Not at the moment. No.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I guess was there? I just wanted to go back to then, like, thinking about granularity and thinking about like tranches. Was there any reason why you guys didn't provide like an example template about tranches? I guess you've said that it would look identical. It's just that for instance, like in these mitigation tabs that we're looking at right now, it it doesn't appear that tranche is a variable that's included in that in any of those tables. So we don't know which tranches the mitigation is impacting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can see in these tables as you see them. That's correct. It's not itemized which tranches they affect.
Yeah. So if we so because it's at the program level, you're essentially not going to tell us like which portion of the mitigation program is going to be reducing risk from which tranche.
We will. That is a requirement of the RDF that we need to show that piece, and so that is what essentially you'll see at the tranche level.
I see. So right, you have the additional templates, not just at the risk level, but at the tranche level associated with each mitigation ID. Okay. All right. And then, yeah, I guess it would have been really helpful to actually see what that structure looks like. Will the tranche templates have a field that also describes the structure of the tranche? I mean, what does tranche ID mean and look like? Because we don't have a definition for that in the guideline.
It would differ for each of
Sure.
the risks, as you can imagine, right? So, yeah, we could take that back to see how we could further describe that so it's clear.
Yeah, I think without being able to see like what the field description is for that, yeah, it makes it a little bit difficult to try to imagine like what kind of information is actually going to be in that tranche ID field, because it could just be. I mean, I would hope that it's not going to be a random collection of alphanumeric letters, right? We would hope that it's kind of intelligible and logical, and that way, folks that are looking at your data can get a sense for yeah, what the tranche actually is and what it looks like.
Yeah, and consistent with previous ramps as well. We'll make sure they tie into the risk that they originate from, and hopefully you'll see where the mitigations map to them as well.
So, okay, another detailed question about the tranching table, since we don't get a chance to see it. Is there a field that would describe which assets or systems are included within the tranche? And maybe I can add a little bit of extra context for that, because you guys have recently filed like a white paper to describe an alternative approach to tranches, correct?
Correct.
And in that white paper, you provided like a couple of examples. One was wildfire without PSPS, and another was the gas related example. And especially the gas one, it sounded like that was like very hypothetical, and when you created the white paper. But at least with regard to the wildfire related one, you listed out the feeder IDs and the cores and the lores that were associated with them. I'm sure the feeder ID is just an anonymous value, but that's actually an interesting variable point, because it allows you to understand like which assets are actually included within each tranche. And so I just wanted to know, are you planning to include that variable in your tranche fields for the data template?
Yeah, so for everyone's awareness, I think what you're referring to is each of the dots, if you will, that were on our graph for the homogeneous tranching methodology. For wildfire specifically without PS, it indicated a circuit segment, right? So that was a unique lower level pair of data. But for the medium pressure gas example, which is not hypothetical, those were actual that was based on actual data as well internally that we're using for the assessment. But we call them lore core pairs, right? And so for each of those assets and systems that you'd asked about, there is a lore core pair there. And so, yeah.
That's helpful. I wanted to ask because it's not actually clear in that gas example. What exactly is the asset? Is it just because you say that it's either a main or a service, a material, plastic or steel, and I'm just curious, is it like a length of pipeline? Is that what that particular uh like segment is that you're referring to?
And here's where I'll phone a friend, Chloe or Alan, please. You welcome to interject there and explain there in detail.
Yeah. Hi, Eddie. These are really good questions. First of all, back to your question, what is the description to the tranche? It really depends on what is the tranching method, right? So if we did quintile approach, for example, I think the identification should be something like maybe lore 5, core 2. That would tell you, you know what I'm saying? So identify which of the 25. So something like that. So numeric in that sense. As we described in the white paper, for the homogeneous tranche approach, it would be the description would be risk quantile, whatever, let's say third, risk quantile. So that tells you the level of risk it is. Then the next would be that if it's the lower core, lower core, that would mean there's 4 regions within. So it tells you basically at this risk quantile, is this like a lower making it up in the upper core of whatnot. We described that in the white paper. So that would I would imagine that's how we would describe which tranche it comes from. But of course, before that, we will also say that what class it is. So if the class is like you mentioned, hey, this is steel pipe, this is steel. So we would say, okay, this is steel, third risk quantile, lower upper core, and that would identify where you are. And that was actually the what we were saying, that we can get a little more description in this homogeneous tranche approach of what is being reduced by this mitigation. So you would know where you are, and it's a little more descriptive. So that's what I'm imagining would be the description of what is a tranche. Now, to answer your other question, I think in the white paper, we had preliminary numbers. We did do a hypothetical, what are the classes, so we can demonstrate, because we haven't figured out what are the classes. We did use our last general rate case, a tranching, which was for the medium pressure was broken into plastic, steel, mains, and services. But we're going to have more than that. So it's going to be MSAs, for example, and regulators. So it's going to be more classes. And so we're trying to figure all that out. But yeah, to answer that question, I hope I answered that question, or maybe you can follow up.
I'll tell you what, actually, I just realized that we've gone a little bit over time. We probably should have taken a break like about 10 minutes ago. But maybe, Alan, you could think about what my question, the last part of my question was, what's the level of granularity that you were using in order to create those tranches? And what are you calling that? I mean, the risk-based decision-making framework requires it to be assets or systems. And I'm just curious as to what level of granularity was used for the gas example. It's pretty clear, I think.
Okay,
Jay
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
How about we come back in like 10 minutes and 10 minutes should be fine. And then we can have a follow-up conversation about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. And I guess just in case, Josh, it looked like you were presenting from a PPT, so I will put.
I have the PDF if you'd like me to put the break slide from the PDF.
That's okay. I can put it up, no problem. There we go. Be back in 10. Thanks, everybody. So we'll be back at, let's just be back at 11:20. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thanks, Ed.
think we're back at 11:20, so use the sound of my voice to bring everybody back, as always. Maybe if Alan, if you're still with us, let me know. And also Jade.
Yes.
Here.
Hi guys.
Thank goodness. Then
Thank
something didn't take
goodness.
me out.
I'm really glad. Okay, good. I'll stop sharing this break slide, and then maybe while Josh is bringing up the slide deck again, maybe Alan, we could just kind of, and Jade, we can kind of finish our conversation about like, you know, in that tranche, you know, I think it would probably be in your the tables that are under the blue category, whatever the pre-mitigated risk tranche level, like would you guys have a field that includes, you know, the different assets that are listed, kind of the same way that you did with your example in the tranche white paper? Would we be able to see those values listed in that pre-mitigated risk tranche level work paper?
So Eddie, I'll try to clarify. Yes, there will be an identifier in the tranches that will connect the risk that it stems from, as well as for the mitigation that it ties to as well. So there'll be a descriptive field as to what the tranche is, and to your point about the assets, there will be in that descriptive field described as well if it's a feeder ID for wildfire or other segment of asset for other areas like gas.
Right, but what I'm asking for, or what I'm kind of thinking about, is the 2B in this slide where it says pre-mitigated risk tranche level. Would you also list out, you know, the assets that are associated with that tranche?
I think, Eddie, just to clarify the question, you're saying, are you going to show the lower core pairs that map to the resulting tranches, similar to the work papers that you provided with the white paper? Is that what you're asking?
Sure, if you want to call them work
Okay,
pairs, yes.
yeah. And by the way, just to answer your other question, for the medium pressure, there were, those rows were by a type of medium pressure, and then the cause, and then there was also population density or business area. So those were how they were, and then there's miles of pipe to those. It's not pipe section. I know you asked me if there was a pipe section, those rows. Yeah, no, they're aggregate up to those levels or described by those levels. And when we include those, haven't thought about that. We know we are going to obviously provide the resulting tranches, but maybe we just take that back and figure that out. That's a good question.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, yeah, we just got to take that back. But it's a lot of data, but so you let us take that back. I think I understand your question finally now.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, like your tranche development, and when you present that, there's going to be like a data set that like has that information. Yeah, and so I suppose you could link them, but yeah, I mean, if you're packaging this as like your data template and the type of information that's, you know, helpful to analysts, then you know, I would, unless you were planning on including that tranche analysis into your data template, I would just kind of recommend including that within that 2B data template, because I think it's a good fit for that particular piece of the analysis. So yeah, thanks for at least walking me through that idea, and thank you for explaining like the fact that it was miles of pipeline was that level of granularity when you were doing the tranche analysis. I guess I'm not quite clear about what the range would be for, because I'm assuming that each of those has a different range, but or it has
Yeah,
a different.
the miles aren't equal. Yeah, they're not. It
Right.
depends on how much steel and what is the one more other is if it's state of the art or not. If all of those, how much is that in that is, so the mileage are different. There's different mileages. Yeah. And those are the exposure, right? So when we talk about the exposure is the mileage, for example, but MSAs aren't in miles, so those are the number of MSAs, and so yeah, it's different for each of those different asset types within the medium pressure.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you for the questions.
No problem. Let's see. I just want to make sure that I captured all of that. Yeah, I guess the other question is just, I think you guys answered it already, was that there will be, in that tranche template, there will be likelihood and consequence values. Just like there is for the pre-mitigated risk, the 2A at the risk level, there's like values for likelihood and for each of the 3 consequences, and that would be the same for 2B as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, this one right here. Yeah. Okay, great. And then, okay, great. Yeah, I think that's the main questions I had for tranches. And then I wanted to real quick go back while we were at break. Something clicked in my mind about the general rate case integrated database. So Jamie, I had a maybe it's kind of a question for you and for Jade. Like, it's good to know that the information related to costs is kind of like being fed from this grid database. But I just wanted to ask, why is it a field value constraint? Is it because a field value constraint just tells you like what kind of information can be in that field?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, somebody said, oh yeah, they understand.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they weren't saying oh yeah to me. Let's see who that person is. See if we can mute them. Sandy.
Yeah, well, in our workshop right now.
I'll mute him. Okay. Anyway, I don't know if Jade or Jamie, if you guys wanted to kind of talk about that real quick. Oh, is Jamie still on?
It looks like she dropped off, Eddie.
Yeah, Jade, maybe I don't know if there's anybody else from underneath Jamie that you might be able to ask for a helping hand on that. But I was just curious as to why the grid was considered a field constraint and not just part of the field description.
No, yeah, we can take that back, Eddie. I think we were just focusing on the fact that that's where those numbers were coming from and being like, that's where we hold the numbers. And so essentially we're just pulling from the grid database and we can point to that where it auto populates some of our work papers for us. So we can take that back and probably remove that from the field value constraints.
Yeah, I think it's a better fit for the field description.
Yeah, we can definitely take that into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Did that make sense, Jade? What I was describing?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's not quite a field description though. It's the database itself. It's where we're holding the data, right? And so we want to make sure we differentiate, what is grid data, which is very much source data for us, or the source of truth, if you will, from someone's spreadsheet, right? So it's a reminder for us as well.
Okay, yeah. I think it makes sense in the field description, but the field value constraint would just be a dollar value. It wouldn't be anything unique other than a dollar value. So, okay, great. I've obviously dominated the question period again, and so I just wanted to see if there's any questions that folks have. And yes, Chris, thank you for joining.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate kind of walking through this. Helps me understand it better. I think what Jade, you were mentioning earlier that for alternatives in your templates, you might mark them as alt or ALT. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Okay.
In any case, we'll we'll make them uniquely identifiable so they're not so mixed in with others that you can't see them.
Yeah, okay. I think that would be really helpful. And um, and then I think you were also mentioning in terms of the upcoming ramp, you're using what's been clarified so far in your submission or for your next application. And so to the extent that I think Sempra is able to get more granular than say at the program level rather than just the program level, but to the degree you're able to that Sempra is able to provide project level information, I think that would be extremely valuable, especially when we're talking about wildfire risk or PSPS risk. One thing we've mentioned in the past is, for example, with PSPS risk, if an operator were looking at using a specific metric like an average of PSPS duration or an average of PSPS duration and frequency relative to the entire system, that number might look very different compared to a pocket of customers or a select set of customers who might experience the greatest frequency or the longest duration of a PSPS event. So having that at a granular level would then may lead to projects in a ramp application and then later in a GRC that target the customers, the subset of customers that may have the greatest, may experience the greatest impacts rather than trying to do a mitigation that may decrease the average. The mitigation to that could be very different. Rather than looking at an average reduction in duration or frequency, that might lead to a certain type of a mitigation that would be very different from targeting customers that experience the greatest duration or the greatest frequency. So I think there's a lot of benefits that can be achieved by having greater granularity and being able to capture that in a template. So to the extent that that can be incorporated in, I know, a lot of what we're discussing now probably will, we're going to have more presentations and then there'll be a process I expect where the commission will may adopt, kind of a standardized template that we can then just use across everyone, all the utilities. But to the extent that, in the upcoming ramp that any of this could be incorporated, I think it would be very useful to a lot of folks and the commission. The other thing is I think you mentioned that, I think in the presentation that Sempra gave last December, they provided some numbers or some information about unscaled numbers in terms of risk. And to the extent that that information can also be included rather than just scaled, and actually Cal Advocates templates are actually asking or suggesting that both the scaled information and the unscaled information be provided. So it just gives more of an understanding of the difference between those. And then to the extent that there's more clarity on how Sempra can combine the capital with the expenditures, that will lead to understanding the revenue requirement. That I think would be very helpful. So other than that, I don't have any other specific questions regarding the templates at the moment, but I just wanted to capture what I think I understood you explaining to see if I kind of got that right. So, but anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, yeah, no feedback on that, Jade?
I didn't hear a particular question. I did capture, the project level interests as well as scaled values and the numbers that help derive the revenue requirement.
Okay. So I actually have like kind of a high level structural question, and maybe I should have asked this last week for Southern California Edison, but for all of us here. But now that we have both Edison and Sempra's templates to kind of consider, I just wanted to ask a question about the way that we present the discount scenarios. Maybe Hafizur, I'll finish this question, then I'll come back to you. And then, so if we could go to, it's like the yellow tabs. I think it's probably in the later slides. Yeah. So, and I'm just going to summarize from what I understand, and I don't want to misrepresent, but my understanding here is that what the Sempra companies have made a decision to essentially create additional fields specific to the calculation of present value for test year, for post-test year. And I know we've already kind of talked through that today, but I just wanted to reflect on the approach that SCE did with their data templates, which was instead of adding additional fields, you would add additional rows for each mitigation, where you would have a discount rate scenario. And I guess my question, since Jade, this is your presentation, but if somebody from SCE is on the line and wanted to talk to this a little bit, but is there a reason to do the present value calculation, the discounted calculations in fields rather than in like the scenario approach that SCE chose? Is there a reason that you decided to do it this way?
That's a good question, Eddie. For me, this is my logical brain of how it all laid out. I think it's more traceable as a field to me. That said, I think our options are open. If we'll have to consider if the way Edison laid it out is better for us as well.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's helpful, because I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't like some constraint that I wasn't aware of that would prevent the calculation if it was in the scenario format that Edison presented. Yeah, I think I can say I was going to say this during our presentation, but we actually found the scenario approach to be helpful. It kind of consolidates everything within one field. It adds additional rows, but that may not be too large of a challenge. It just depends. But either one, in the end, either one should come up with the same calculation, and the data would be available regardless of if it was presented as a scenario or if it was presented as a field in this manner. So yeah, just thought I would ask to see. I just want to double check that there's not really a specific constraint or anything. It's just a preference more than anything.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that back and see if we can make that adjustment if it's applicable.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, Hafizur, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I have a follow-up question based on, I think Eddie has asked many questions regarding to template. And the way you structure the hierarchy level, how you walk us through is very nice and easy to follow through. But I think the question remains, what I was wondering, if you folks going to have a follow-up with an example template that would be very helpful. For example, if you have pre-mitigation risk level that I want to connect with cost, for example, tranche level, or mitigation level for BCR. doing so, it will help us and, of course, many other those who are attending this meeting. That would be helpful. But I'm not sure, unless I missed it, if you folks planning to come back to explain, sort of like walk us through with an example template.
We'll have to take that back to the team and see if we can put something together with the current schedule. Right now, I mean, we have comments due today as well. So we'll just have to take that back to the team to see if we can actually put something together this week in that time frame. But thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Great. Actually, Josh, could you go back to that last slide? I just noticed something that I guess I missed in the presentation, which is that in the top right-hand corner, you have, with an exclamation point, 1 per mitigation. So does that mean that you would be developing, you would be filling out this data template, and then it would be separate for each mitigation? Is that right, Jay?
Yeah, that's correct. And you see that top right corner 1 per mitigation tab on several of the slides as well.
You know, if you added the field risk ID to this, would that still be necessary?
Would it be necessary? Are you asking if it's necessary or is it helpful?
I mean, the question is like, in some of your risks, you're going to have, you know, maybe a couple dozen mitigation types, and so maybe not that many. Maybe that's a little bit large, but it does seem like some of the risks do have like a pretty large number of mitigations, and so does it make sense to have like a separate tab for each mitigation, or couldn't you just have one of these fields for, or one of these data sets for each risk, and then depending on the mitigation ID, the numbers would change depending on what the mitigation ID was listed out?
Yes, I think there are more limited documents for the risk, or tables, I should say, for the risk side. But as you can see in the identifier for the risk, or excuse me, the mitigation ID, it does start with the risk name as well. So you can see the example on this side. EII is the risk name that this is tied to.
Yeah. I think I was misunderstanding. I think when you say 1 per mitigation, you're meaning 1 row per mitigation, not 1 tab per mitigation.
That's correct, Eddie. The way that the Excel is laid out, so we would go from each tab. So each row would be each one of those mitigation IDs.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah. At first, I was thinking that maybe the entire tab, and then there would only be 1 mitigation ID per tab, and that doesn't really make sense. So, yeah. So I guess, Jade, what you're saying is that the identifier for the mitigation ID would include the risk ID within it. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, the first few digits there. Yeah.
But from like a filtering perspective, though, if you added in the column risk name, I think that's what you used elsewhere. Yeah, if you added that into this particular field, it would allow the analyst to just search for the mitigation ideas related to that particular risk.
We can take that back for consideration.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I think that would make it much easier, and I think that because you, like, for instance, in the mitigation summary page, you have risk name listed in all of those. So I think for the BCRs, it makes sense to do that as well, just for the ease of filtering. Just something for you guys to think about adding. Great. Any other thoughts or questions from anyone else in the team? No? All right. I will kind of start to wrap us up here. We're still about 45 minutes early, but if there's no additional questions, I'm happy to give everybody a little bit of time back before going to lunch. So we will reconvene again tomorrow at 10. and Pacific Gas and Electric will be presenting. And so I don't know if Hannah or somebody else from PG&E is on the line, but you're welcome to join us at 9:30 to kind of do some quick, you know, kind of mic checks and videos and what have you. Great. I think on that note, what can someone remind me, was Southern California Edison doing the summary for today?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. And I'll be sure to share the YouTube recording of this presentation as soon as it's available to you. And then just a reminder that I will be collecting all of the YouTube links and sharing them out to the service list kind of in one blast so that we don't have to fill up everybody's email inbox. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Okay. And thanks, everybody. We will see you.